Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Empowered Soul Network interview with Jini Wimmer, a life coach. It's Reverend Coach Jini, yes. And also life coach and a founder of the Women's Empower Network. I know you were actually on talking with my dad the other day, just kind of announcing your group because Jini is a colleague of ours. We're all uplifting and supporting each other in establishing these connection Facebook groups that help uplift each person in our own unique niches that we are inspired and passionate about. So welcome again, Jini. This interview is about you. We want to get to know you more. So please introduce yourself. Maybe tell me why Reverend Coach Jini as well.
Okay, well, yeah, that's a potent question. I mean, from 5 years old, I just came into this life experience being aware of my higher self, didn't know what that was. In my 30s, I had the experience of just being pure consciousness without my personality or my body, and had several experiences since then. So, and I had dabbled in every fundamental religion there was. And by my late 20s, I remember laying in my hammock one day, looking up at the clouds going, God, this is not it. Where is it? This is not it. And then I got introduced to New Age through my first husband. And so for the next 3 years, I did astrology and tarot cards and learned about Akashic records and numerology and you name it, and that was in the 70s, early 80s. And then after 3 years, I'm like, well, these are nice tools, but this isn't it either. And then it wasn't until it was after that time, it was in my mid 30s, when I had that experience of being pure consciousness. And then after having the experience and going, I was working for a big oil company at the time. It was like, well, what do I do with this? Everybody else is sleepwalking. Okay, I know this, but now what? So I didn't know what to do with it. And then about 5, 6 years later, I started getting downloads. And it happened so regular that I actually got a cassette player. And I thought to myself, I wonder if I could record this. And sure enough, every day I would get this information and I would walk and talk and be able to, have it come right through. And then after a couple months, it occurred to me, maybe it's not just for me. And at that point in my life, I was like, no way, nobody's going to listen to me. And I felt too insecure. And I'm like, yep, not doing it. And it went away, you know? So then after I semi-retired, I started dabbling with doing workshops and traveling around the country and trying to teach other people about consciousness. And then I ran out of money. And then I prayed, be careful what you ask for. I am a powerful creator. I wanted to be normal. What is normal? So I married this normal guy, this car guy. He was a gifted artist, painted cars, and we were really happy and got a homestead and had chickens and a garden. And I was like, just hiding out. Well, then he passed away with his dream still in him. And that hit me really hard because then I started thinking, if I was on my deathbed, what would I regret? And I would regret not sharing all this wisdom and all this knowledge and all these gifts that have been given to me over my whole lifetime that helped me healed from my childhood and sexual abuse and, bankruptcies. I mean, you name it. I kind of, divorce. I kind of experienced a lot of different things through my life. And when I was younger, there used to be the expression, I was telling your dad that there's the right way, there's the wrong way, and Jini's way. And every time I did it Jini's way, and I'm arguing with my higher self, spirit, whatever you want to call it, Gus, it would say, don't do this, don't do this. And it was just quite subtle. It's always for me, very subtle. It's not like the ego mind that rants. And no, I got this, I got this. Well, needless to say, I lost everything, my home, I went bankrupt. I needed that 4x4 to get it.
Hmm.
And the other thing I said the other day too is when I was really young, I thought, oh, if I listened to my spirit, that was going to be dull and boring and I'd have to be goody two shoes. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So now I've come to realize that what I want and what spirit wants for me are actually one and the same. And that it wants life to be exciting for me and fun and feel alive and be of service. And so that's where I decided to bring the Reverend in. I did get ordained Christian, but for me, it's like somebody who's revered and respected. That was the original meaning of it. And so by putting that in front of my name every day, it reminds me that I am revered and respected and unconditionally loved by my spirit, and that I'm allowing spirit to come through to guide my actions. And that, if you are aware of your intuition, the only thing I would have to say is no matter how ridiculous it seems or how hard it seems, take action, follow your intuition. You will make life so much easier on yourself.
That's an amazing journey you just took us all on. I found myself kind of hanging on every word. I had to write stuff down because I was like, there's certain things I wanted to ask you more about, but I could feel myself pulled right into everything else you're sharing. One thing, can you take us back to those moments? I think you said it was before your 30s in this, that's not it. You mentioned that's not it. What was happening for you? What did that feel like for you?
Well, like I said, I did. I was trying, it was like trying on a costume. I made friends with people of every fundamental religion there was. I'd go to their church, I'd live their lifestyle, and I'd try it on. And it just felt like putting on a fake coat or a fake fur, it was like, ooh, gotta
Mm.
take this off. This isn't it. It was very uncomfortable. Because I did find a home in a church that I was able to raise my kids in. And when I walked in and I heard the minister, it was an instant feeling of home. It's like, there's no question, there's no doubt, there's no secondary thoughts. It's like, oh, I'm home.
Mm.
And that was my journey with that church. It was a universal church. It wasn't Christian. It was back then it was called it's called Center for Spiritual Living. It was Ernest Holmes.
Mm.
And that our words and our thoughts and our beliefs create. And that's what I raised my kids in. So that was the leaping off.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you and see you, right, describe that feeling of like not in alignment. It just doesn't jive with me. And that's a beautiful thing to recognize, because there's really no right? There's no right thing for any one of us, but there's something that we resonate with at any given time. That's what I hear you say. And that feeling of
Well,
home, oh.
it is. And so many of us just do it out of obligation, or like we think it's the right thing to do. But if it doesn't really resonate with your heart, I really challenge you to keep exploring, to find that place that really feels home. And of course, now it's like home's inside, but I still love community and I love connecting with you and like-minded people. And that's even more beautiful. And I prayed for that actually. After my husband died, we moved to this little ski town and I didn't have any friends and I was by myself a lot and I was really getting lonely. And I call it a prayer. I just prayed. It's like, God, I'd really like to, I really loved it when I belonged to this organization or that organization, and I want to feel at home and I want to feel connected. And that introduced me to Empower Network TV. And your dad actually was, because my friend who introduced me wasn't available. So your dad, Paul Kellogg, interviewed me on Empower Network. I don't know if they call it First Date or something like that. I forget.
Probably.
But and then And then Amos interviewed me, and his heart was so open. I totally resonated with him. And then he mentioned Catapult, which we're a part of how to grow your business. And that's where the birthing of Women's Empower Network came from. And I'm a very generous person, so it's just in alignment with who I am that I can serve. It's so easy to serve. I think the interviews are so much fun, and I love hearing people's stories because, as you know, somebody who needs to hear something may not hear it from me, but may hear it for somebody else within the group.
Yeah.
And that we need all our voices. And that's why I say, unleash your inner voice. It's not just one of us, it's all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. How would you describe yourself as a child?
Ooh, I was a adventuresome soul. I was a tomboy. I climbed 30-foot trees. Because my family was yours, mine, and ours. And so because I was the eighth child, there was less concern about my well-being, which was perfect for my personality.
Right.
And at the time, I remember I think back, it's like the things that I did. I don't know how I did it. I tend to be a natural leader. So I got a bunch of little fourth graders with me, take a bus from Miami to Miami Beach so that we could dive off a pier into 3 feet of water. And that's only when the wave was coming in. And then they were spearfishing underneath that pier, snorkelers were. So I've always had kind of a daredevil, like just go out there and physically challenge myself. And then when I had children, I had to reel that in. We were talking the other day, and somehow the logic in my mind is, okay, well, I shouldn't rock climb without gear. So let's go fly airplanes.
Find a way to meet the need.
It did. I had that adrenaline thing going, when I was younger, and it needed to be satisfied. I needed an outlet for it.
Do you feel like, was there, as you go through the phases of your life, do you feel certain parts of you re-emerging that you put aside at certain times?
That's 1,000% true. I mean, coming out of retirement and getting with like-minded people, it's like awakening all these things. And I think about flying airplanes again, and I feel like I'm coming back alive and doing a lot of things that obviously this is the perfect time for me to be doing it, or I would have been doing it sooner. And I've taken better care of myself so that I can be here for the next 20 years to continue to be of service. Because my biggest mission is people who don't have the self-confidence or the belief, but they have this thing they want to do. It could be like, say, a health coach because of a health issue they had, or something like that, to give them the confidence and the courage to believe in themselves and to have a sisterhood of other women supporting them and say, yes, you can do this and that. These lies and false beliefs that we all have, to learn how not to listen to them and not waste 20 years like I did, And I think I almost had to waste 20 years so that I could be here now saying that, and that be my message. I don't care if you're Oprah Winfrey or Taylor Swift. She's a woman after my own heart. Even they have self-doubt and insecurities. It's just part of the human experience. So I wish I understood then what I understand now, is that it's just a part of this human makeup. And the only way it wins is if by you not taking action and not doing something. The secret to getting past the fear is just take action. Just do something and get a group of people who really support you. Not, like I came from a military family. They would never, I would be so ridiculed and made fun of doing this and believing the things I believe and having the experiences. Yeah. So having like-minded community and support and that's what I want to provide is key.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, the energy of teamwork is just so profound in however you relate to it and wherever you work, whether it's your teamwork in your family, teamwork in your job. It's that uplifting element and support is just so huge.
Well, it is. And I was a solopreneur for so long. And there's this synergy that happens when you get 2 or 3 people together, it creates its own new entity. And so I've noticed that, and I love that masterminding, where a better idea comes out of the original one and just kind of blossoms and goes to a whole new level that you can't get that by yourself.
Mm, yeah. Tell me about the words persistent and consistent. What does that mean to you?
That's my gift.
Mm,
I can sprint and not last very long, but I could walk for days.
mm,
And I was born with the gift of persistence, even when I'm tired or it's hard. Um, I'm like the tortoise.
mm,
And there's different philosophies, and there's more than one philosophy about how you manifest. And especially if you're trying to do something big. In my younger days, I had a lot of failures because I was being the hare and I was trying to make it fast and things didn't happen and oh, it's not working. And so I'd quit.
mm,
And when I switched to a long-term view and that this is a journey and
mm,
I don't know how long this journey is going to take, then I'm much more relaxed. It's a lot more fun. And I just do the things that I need to do. And think about it. If you have a musician or a singer or an artist, they do the same things over and over and over a million times until it's in their muscle memory. And so it's like building a business. It's the same thing. You do it over and over and over again until it becomes second nature,
mm,
and then you build on that.
mm. Yeah. It's interesting. You've had such a range of experience in your life, right? Of very many varying degrees. You've mentioned a couple. Is there anything like a super impactful, specific experience that you think about that just altered a course for you in any way?
Several, but probably 2 come to mind that are most potent. One is if you grew up being victimized as a child or sexual assault or anything like that, the most profound thing that I finally came to realize, and I'll tell you, it was like taking a effing big horse pill. When I realized I was playing the victim and like trying to get sympathy and empathy and like I was the only one. And now at my age and hearing stories, there isn't a human being. It's part of the human condition that we experience things to varying degrees. So realizing that, that was like hard to accept and swallow and embarrassing. I actually felt extremely embarrassed. Like I've been walking around with this, victim mentality. And then the other thing I realized is that why was I carrying around the emotional work of somebody else that was mentally ill? Let them do their own effing work. You know, it was kind of like, it finally occurred to me, give it back, and I had the most profound, I was able to heal myself with my relationship with my mother. And I understand now my mother did the best she could. My mother gave me a better childhood than what she had, even though it was full of abandonment and rageaholic, and she was bipolar and a lot of things because she had so much trauma in her life. She did the best of what she could do. So when I healed myself and stopped expecting her to be any different than what she was, then I really got to know her. And then 2 weeks before she died, out of the blue, she says, honey, do you like yourself? And I was like taken back. That's an odd question. I says, well, as a matter of fact, I do. She says, I hate myself. oh my God, it was like July 4th fireworks in my brain. It's like, what could somebody who hates themselves say to a little girl? And I just realized in that moment, it was never about me. Anything that anybody ever did to me, whether it was sexual assault, physical abuse, mental abuse, it was never, ever about me. It was about them. They were hurting, and only hurt people hurt people.
Mm.
It freed me up. I was able to just let go of all this heavy burden that wasn't mine to start with. And I just literally, I would verbally say, I give it back. I just release it. And then it was discovering from that little girl that was so adventuresome that kind of got squashed down, to be reborn, so to speak, as they say.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's very poignant. There's a lot of freedom I can feel in what you're and how you're expressing that. To me, that's the essence of that, is that feeling inside for you of
It's freedom.
Yeah.
It's absolute. When you realize that whatever interaction you're having isn't about you, you're in charge of how you respond to it and what story you make up about that situation. But when you recognize that everybody's just acting out from their own experience, you're not responsible. You're free. You just choose how you want to show up.
Yeah. How do you feel that experience helped you in like working with your boundaries in life? It's like there's the freedom side of it, right? But then obviously, I mean, you've gone through these experiences. It's not to make light of like, hey, that's not okay kind of thing. So going forward, do you feel like you were able to create that healthy set of like, this fits for me, this doesn't?
There's an expression, let's see if I can recall it. It has to do, I'll have to paraphrase, but it has to do when you change your internal conditions and they rise above your external conditions, then your external conditions have to change, because it's going to match, if we speak in frequencies and vibrations, and even think about it on an emotional scale. You can imagine if you're an angry person, then life's going to show you things that give you reason to feel angry about. But if you're a happy person, then the person who cuts you off in line is like, oh, they must be in a hurry. Let me let them in. It's just a totally different outlook. And you respond to life and you attract to yourself. Like, I think people are innately good and they're innately intelligent and they're doing the best they can. And so I draw really high vibrational people to me now, much higher than I used to. I think about the young men I used to date in my 20s, and I wouldn't give them the right time of day. It's not that they were bad people, but that's where I was. So now, like my late husband, he was my best friend and he had a passion. And that was like on my checklist. I had a list of things, but it wasn't about what they look like. It was attributes, it was values, it was their integrity, who they were as a person. And I got that in spades with them. It didn't mean we didn't have our challenges or our issues. Absolutely we did. But because there were so many good things, there was honesty, there was integrity. He had, I always felt like I was important. I could totally be myself. I didn't have to play games or manipulate or try to get him. It was like, you either like me for who I am or you don't. And either way, it's okay. So I was independent and he was independent. And then we became interdependent as opposed to codependent or dependent on each other. And so we could support and uplift each other in our passions and what we wanted to do. And we supported them 100%. I didn't want to go to car shows, but it got him excited and I loved seeing him excited. So I went to some car shows,
Yep.
Glad I don't have to anymore. But I loved it because I just loved watching him be all lit up.
And it sounds like, I mean, from everything you've been expressing, you've always had this personality of finding either what you can learn from or finding the good in all of your experiences.
That's 1,000% true. I remember my mother, she could, I had some stuff stolen like when I was in my early 20s. And like 40 years later, she's still harping about it. And she said, doesn't it bother you? And my answer was, Mom, it takes way too much energy to hang on to that stuff. I just, I'm very forward. If anything I'm guilty of, it's like I'm actually much, much better, but I used to futurize all the time. I would let go of the past, but I would spend a lot of time daydreaming and dreaming about the future and missing out right now. And just having this conversation made me realize how in the now I have become. And just the future is going to take care of itself. What matters is what choices and what am I doing now?
Yeah. Very cool.
Thank you.
Mentioned that yeah, thank you. You mentioned that you had been pulling together a course based on your life lessons and so forth. If you were to pick one thing to share of that piece of life lessons that you want to add to this conversation before we wrap up, what would it be?
Probably my most profound and favorite one is compromise. We are taught how to compromise our true self and override that inner voice, that intuition. And until I did this exercise, I did not realize, because we started present time things where you said yes and you wanted to say no or vice versa. But it took me back and it made me realize the first time I became aware of it, there was this Uncle Bud. I don't think he was a blood relative. And I'm 5 years old. There's a room of all adults. And I was told to get on this man's lap and give him a kiss and he'd give me a quarter. And everything in my being was like, no way, I don't want to do this. But there were all these adults around. And I said no like one or two times, but everybody, no, go do it, go do it, So I overrode what my gut was telling me. And the guy just gave me the creeps. I mean, never did anything bad to me, but I didn't like his energy. I didn't have the words for it, obviously, at 5 years old. And so there's very, very subtle ways, children are to be seen and not heard. So it caused me to not speak up. And even once in a blue moon now, as a grown adult, I'll catch myself when something doesn't feel right and I keep it to myself. And then I don't really beat myself up, but I make myself very aware. Notice that you didn't speak up and it probably would have served you to speak up, and because that lesson still needs to be learned. So I'm still getting opportunities for it it's like, and they're nothing real dangerous or serious or anything, but they're still like, if the thought comes up, it's like, I think I need to pay attention to that. But yeah, so we're conditioned, especially as women, if you get angry, you're a bitch. If you're too loud, that's offensive. And we've been taught not to honor who we are, not just as women, but as individuals, because even boys and men too.
Yeah. Yeah, that speaks mountains right there. And yeah, the energy of practicing, right? I think that's the last thing I heard you say, just in the broad sense of it, is we're all refining. We're all continuing to learn and grow on various things. So it's funny that you say that. It's like, no, not big things. And I find that myself too, those things I'm still working on, they show up because I haven't mastered them yet, but they show up on much more subtle and subtle and subtle ways so that I can continue to flex that muscle until it's just exactly as strong as I need it to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Jini. Let us know. Obviously, we're going to tag you here Any last things about how people can connect with you before we do that?
Well, like you said, down in the comments, I'll put the group. Please come join the group. As you know, we have amazing things to come do interviews and share your inner voice. Somebody else needs to hear your story. You may not think so, but somebody will hear something you say that will give them the courage or help them take action. So come to the group and find out how to become a founders, because then that's going to give you the opportunity to be on even bigger stage.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Sandra. I love this.
Me too.